Hello! So we have the new moon in Virgo, and I think that this is when we can really make the most of this Mars and Virgo transit that we've had. I mean, ironically, for the last like 5 weeks, but we were working with a different lunar cycle for the last month. We were working with the new moon in Leo leading to the full moon and back to the new moon where we are now. So I think that, especially with the sun being in Virgo for the next, basically the next 2 weeks, we're about halfway through this sun season transit with Virgo. This is a really great opportunity to stay focused, especially for this next week. But even when Mars moves on into Libra, it's still going to be conjunct the sun. And so for this next week, especially, but also like kind of basically the next couple of weeks, this whole lunar cycle is going to be marked by this. So the focus is, what do I want to get, not want, what do I need to get done? What do I need to organize? What do I need to manifest in tangible physical reality, especially over the next week, because Mars will be in Virgo. And then when it moves on into Libra, it's going to be a little bit of a shifting of the goals, but it's still going to be building off of this time period. Of course, every transit is just the next step in the story. It's just the next chapter, the next phase. And so when Mars is in Libra and then the sun joins it, that energy is going to be more about what do I do now with this physical manifestation? How do I work with other people? How do I incorporate other people? How do I communicate what I've done to other people, etc.? So we'll get to that when it comes, but I think that this is really important to keep in mind for this new moon, for this whole next month, this next lunar cycle. What is it that I'm getting done? What am I seeking to accomplish? And how do I get all that drive out? Because if we don't get that drive out, Mars energy explodes. You know, every energy has its challenges, and if we don't pay attention to the energy and consciously understand it to the best of our abilities and incorporate it into our lives, then we suffer the challenges of it, the unconscious part of it. And the unconscious part for this lunar cycle is certainly anger, is certainly frustration, picking ourselves apart, picking other people apart, and none of that is inevitable. Again, of course, like I was saying, we can always make the best of every energy. That's the whole point of astrology, is to understand, okay, this is what we're working with, this is how this is what we need to avoid, this is what we need to focus on, and then in focusing on the good stuff, we can amplify that, and we can avoid these challenges just by being aware of it. So if you start to get really angry, if you start to get really antsy, it's time to do a couple things. Again, put yourself to work on stuff that's really meaningful and develop your skills further. And two, just work out. It's that simple. Mars just wants to do stuff, one of my friends sent me a song that's been a theme song for me during this time, which is Dylan Francis's what's it called? About to Go Off, I think. Nothing to it. Ain't nothing to it but to do it. I can't remember the exact. I think it's About to Go Off or something. Go off. That's what it is. And it's that simple. Like, that's really the energy of this time. Is ain't nothing to it but to do it. Like, don't think too much about things. Again, we want to be thinking enough to be effective in our analysis and effective in our preparation and whatnot, but ultimately, like, this is an action-oriented time. It's going to be one of the most action-oriented times of the entire year. I know that we've talked about this before in the past couple of weeks with this Mars and Virgo transit, but the new moon marks this whole next lunar cycle, this next month. And even with Mars moving into Libra over the course of this lunar cycle, I think in about a week and a half, 2 weeks, I haven't looked at the exact date, but even with that, it's still, Mars is going to be there, and again, it's going to be building off of that. So just get stuff done. It's that simple. This is tricky because there is an element of abstract thinking here. We have Mercury in Libra, and especially since Virgo is ruled by Mercury, so that all of that Virgo energy is interacting with that Mercury in Libra transit. There is a sense of, I think that's actually really good to keep in mind, and something that's kind of good to look forward to as per where we're going to be and what we're going to be working with when Mars goes into Libra as well, is, okay, I have my tasks, I'm working, I'm getting stuff done. How does this interact with other people? How do I need to collaborate with other people, cooperate with other people in order for these tasks to get done? There is an element of okay, I'm the artisan, whatever my craft is, I'm getting stuff done, I'm furthering my goals, my skills, I'm getting projects completed, or at least I'm moving them to the next step towards completion. But there is a very strong element, I think, especially over the next week with Venus and Libra as well, and especially, of course, in about 2 days' time, later on this week, we got about Wednesday, Thursday, maybe in the first part of Friday, we have Moon in Libra as well. That's, the Moon travels very quickly. So we're looking more at Mercury in Libra here, as well as Venus in Libra for sure. And there is that focus of self and other. How do I communicate this to other people? So something that's good to keep in mind. And if you're stuck with something, reach out, talk to somebody else, get another person's perspective. That's one of the best ways to understand whatever it is that you're seeking to solve, and to get a vaster perspective on it, because that is the challenge. Again, that is the unconscious challenge with all this Virgo energy, in particular with the Sun and Mars being there for the next several, the next week and a half, at least 2 weeks for the Sun, is to get so fixated on our goals, so fixated on the details, that we lose track of the bigger picture. Like I said before, to lose sight of the forest for the trees. We're just like, oh, this tree, gotta get, it's like, we need to see the larger perspective. This segues very nice into something else I want to cover for today, which is Neptune is at play throughout all of this Virgo energy. We've talked about this a bit before, where it's really important, including for the next week and a half, especially, although roughly for the next 2 weeks also, but anyways, so especially for the next week and a half, Neptune being opposite Mars, these energies, it's so easy to be unconscious about our anger. It's so easy to be frustrated and lash out at X in our life. Could be a person, could be a thing, could be whatever, when in actuality, we really need to resolve Y, or maybe we just need to meditate more, maybe we need to relax more. It could be several things, but ultimately I think that it's really important to resist firing off in anger, because this is a time period where our anger is very tied to our unconscious, to our subconscious, same thing. And it's so important to just to ask more questions rather than just firing off, because it feels good in the moment. Go deeper, figure out, where is this coming from? What does this mean? Is this really a productive way to utilize my energy? Because anger can be helpful. It helps us set boundaries, it helps us to get motivated in certain ways, but ultimately it's a fire type energy. Obviously there's water too, it rules Scorpio, but there's that Aries there. We all need to be mindful with Mars to not burn ourselves out with the anger, So this is a really good time to really figure out not only the anger part, but also, where are my actions coming from? Where are my motivations? What am I seeking to accomplish? Is it really coming from my deeper self, my higher self? And or am I just mad at the world, but I'm really mad at myself deep unconsciously, because I'm not getting my work done? That's a very common manifestation unconsciously with this opposition. So just focus on, okay, what do I need to get done? Is this truly coming from my deeper self, for my best self, for my best interests? And I think that's really helpful. And another thing I want to cover with this is, so I've talked about the last couple times, with all of this energy, I've been really fired up about doing this book, and it just really occurred to me this morning of the timeline that I was looking at is probably enough actually to manifest the book, but to make sure it's really like diamond quality, I need a bit more time. And also, like, there's some transits in October that I'm looking towards, like Jupiter and Saturn turning direct, Mercury being retrograde, where it's like, this isn't a great time to release a book, so even though I was really fired up, and it was good to be fired up, that's something that's really important for all of us to keep in mind, is be fired up, have your set goals, like really specific. This is what I want to accomplish, this is what I want to get done, right? And I'm not going to give up. That's a really important part of it, but also go with the flow. I'm not trying to force anything with this book. I'm not trying to force anything with anything, and that's really important. In any time, but especially during this time, I'm very mindful of this, of like, just because our minds are saying this is right, that doesn't mean that's what's actually right. We also need to listen to our subconscious, our subjective gifts. And intuitively, I was like, let's wait. And I was feeling that from the beginning, but it wasn't really strong until just the last day, basically, with this new moon, like looking ahead to this new cycle, consciously and subconsciously. I was like, So pay attention to that. That's really important. Is, again, focus on your goals, but ask yourself, what am I forcing, or what do I feel? What do I feel intuitively? As per my goals, as per deadlines, everything that's logical and rational, that seems so logical and rational, but maybe isn't necessarily in our best interest. We need to keep this in mind as well. I think the last thing is Jupiter and Saturn being in Aquarius. I know we've covered this a lot. I think the big thing is just keep the big picture in mind. It's just like I was saying, that don't lose the forest for the trees. We're growing so much, and so much is more internal. It's not so much growing in the external public world, it's more internally growing, to be able to then have that expansion in the external world of, oh, this is public, like making public, this is what I've been thinking about, this is what I've been accomplishing, etc. And again, Jupiter and Saturn will both go direct. I don't remember exactly when. I think it's like October 17th, 18th, something like that. That might just be one of them, but it's somewhere in mid-October that these energies go direct. And that's when, again, just like for myself with the book, I'm shooting for November 5th, that new moon. And it's like, yes, intuitively, it's like, that works. Whereas before I was like, oh, September 23rd, oh, my mind is like, oh, intuitively I'm like, oh. And by the way, I also figured out my publishing schedule basically actually for the next couple of years, and that's where Jupiter and Saturn and Aquarius come into play here. Look at the big picture, get organized, get the details, but look at the big picture, and also, again, let the subjective, let your intuition inform your decision-making process, your scheduling process. And so yeah, I'm very excited. Volume 1 with the Sun, Moon, and Rising energies is at the, I feel intuitively, I would love for it to be sooner, same with the other book, but at the latest, and I feel like it probably will be this, though, just checking out the different transits leading up to this point, and also the time needed to make sure it's, again, diamond quality. We want to make sure we're doing things right always, and especially with these kind of energies. I can't remember the exact date. I think it's March 2nd. March 2nd, that's when Volume 1 is going to come out. And then, again, I've had an expansion recently of, I'm going to do Volume 2, Principles of the Planets, Infinite Love, Volume 2. So it's like a shorter book. So it's like short book, big book, short book, large book, short book, large book. So that's my plan for the next several years. The 3 volumes that we've talked about before with all of the different astrological natal chart placements, called astrological natal chart placements, volumes 1, 2, and 3, and then little, Infinite Love 1, what I've learned from astrology, focusing on the zodiac energies and those insights, November 5th of this year. Volume 1, March 2nd of next year, and then Infinite Love Volume 2, Principles of the Planets, focusing on the planets, about 20,000 words, just like the first Infinite Love, about July. And then Volume 2, I can't remember exactly, but it's later on next year, I believe maybe at the latest early 2023 for the Volume 2, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and Jupiter. And then another Infinite Love, and then, of course, the third one. So we don't need to have all the details. As you can tell, I'm kind of hazy on the dates of those latter ones, but we'll figure it out as time goes on. All that matters is that we get the general structure, the general sketch and outline for what we're going to be focusing on, really, for the next couple years, because that Saturn in Aquarius is saying, okay, what is your larger vision here? What are we consciously creating, learning about, accomplishing for the next couple years? As always, I'm doing readings. Feel free to get into contact with me in the About section. Infinite love to you, my friends. Namaste.